What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking out for the future. I'm also going to do some in-depth technical analysis and give you guys my price prediction for tomorrow based off the charts are showing and based off what the data is suggesting. I'm also going to break down why tomorrow is going to be another big day as we have FOMC starting, and also what the data is showing for Tesla based off what's happening in like Giga Berlin, Giga Texas, and also in China, because we have some very big updates there as well that will affect Tesla. Now, before I break anything down, before I talk about what's going on with China and Tesla and everything in the markets, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner, so don't take any of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. Not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And the best part is any of those 12 free stocks could be a free Tesla share, a free NEO share, or a mix of all of them. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends today, so please check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Looking at Tesla at the time of recording this, we're about 1 minute away from close, and Tesla is just barely in the red. Now, in my previous video from yesterday, I predicted that Tesla could actually show some nice price action if the market pushed up. And I thought that Tesla could break above like 230, maybe hold that for today. I did mention that I did see a slight drop to happen later on as the day went on, but I thought Tesla would close around 230 flat. We ended up actually closing at 227. I mean, the market just barely closed like a second ago, so pretty close when it comes to my prediction, but not as much strength as I had anticipated. Now, why is the market now red? What's going on? Well, we did have so many green days in a row, so a slight retracement day is completely normal. But on top of that, there's lots of uncertainty right now because we have the FOMC meeting starting. And when the uncertainty comes from Jerome Powell himself. Jerome Powell has actually mentioned the fact that the Fed is going to make their moves based off data, but he didn't actually talk about the exact date of a potential pivot. And there has been a lot of news trending about that. So I want to break that down real quick before I talk about the charts. So just so we're clear, November 1st through the 2nd is going to be the FOMC meeting dates. But remember, the 2nd is going to be the bigger date where the big rate hike decision is going to be made and the changes to the monetary policy of the Fed. November 1st, however, is somewhat important because we are going to see some Fed officials speaking, and this will have a big effect on the markets. Now, currently, at the time I'm recording this, let me reload the page to make sure that this is as up to date as possible. CME report is actually showing us that the market is fully priced in about 88% of that 75 basis point rate hike. So we're almost there. We almost fully priced in 75 basis points. I'm starting to think that the market could drop a little bit more to fully price this in for tomorrow. But how we move after that, right? How the market ends up moving for the future is going to be heavily dependent on this FOMC meeting. So the bigger dates, just so you guys are prepared, is going to be on the 2nd of November. So the first day of the meeting is going to be tomorrow. It's not going to be as huge, but the bigger day is going to be the 2nd, like I mentioned, on Wednesday at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. So be ready for that. When Powell speaks, the market is going to move like crazy. So expect lots of volatility. As far as Tesla goes, let's look at some data right now. Coming down to this ratio right here, we can see that the SPY is actually outperforming Tesla overall. It's lagging behind a bit, but the same thing could be said about many of tech stocks out there, because if you compare Tesla to the QQQ, for example, they're almost perfectly correlated. It's very, very close, this correlation. Now, looking at the overall price pairs ratio, however, for today alone, Tesla did outperform the market to some degree. Tesla held up pretty well for most of the day. So we are seeing some improvement on this end for Tesla, but overall, it is still relatively weak compared to those other times when the price pairs ratio was higher. Going down, Morgan Stanley is giving Tesla a buy rating technically. They are more bullish for Tesla. They do believe that Tesla is going to make some nice moves for the future. So that is a very good sign. But at the same time, in my opinion, it is a no-brainer. I'm still very bullish long-term, and so are many of these big banks. From a seasonality basis, on Tuesdays, 51% of the time Tesla is green historically. However, for tomorrow, considering that lots of Fed speakers are going to be talking and we have FOMC the day after, we may not see a green day tomorrow, guys. In fact, we could see lots of chop because of that alone. Now, when it comes to short interest, I'm noticing that the short interest has been trending down a bit for Tesla. It came up a little bit on Friday, but overall, it's on a slight downtrend, which is a good sign for Tesla, which is what is contributing to Tesla to making some better moves over the last couple of days compared to the low it made around like that 198 level. However, I'm also noticing that the volume was a little bit dry today. We weren't getting enough buying pressure compared to the average volume from the past week. So that could be a sign of weakness overall, but this is no surprise in my opinion because the buyers are not as aggressive during a day like this when there's so much uncertainty approaching FOMC. Now, looking at the short volume percentage, it's currently at 44%, which is a pretty decent sign because now we're seeing the bulls gaining the edge on this stock, at least for the very, very short term. But for the long term, I'm still very, very bullish. Now, some good pieces of news about Tesla comes from right over here. Tesla plans on expanding the Giga Berlin, which is a very good sign for their expansion news to really boost production and work on the systems to make the cars more efficient and really improve the means of production as well. So it's very good to see something like this. They want to actually further expanded by about 172 acres. That in turn is going to be good for them, in my opinion, if this does lead to more efficient outcomes. And that's what I'm essentially hoping for. Another good piece of news is the fact that Tesla built over 20,000 Model Ys in Giga Texas. So very, very good news as well. We're seeing production ramp up. And as Elon Musk predicted, all right, we are likely going to see one of the highest production quarters in history for Tesla for Q4. I'm certainly hoping for that. And that is most likely going to be the case. In fact, it's very likely that that is the case. But the only thing, in my opinion, that could really slow them down would be external factors out of their control. If you look at what just recently happened, we're starting to see like Disneylands or like Disney resorts in Shanghai shutting down because of the whole lockdowns and things like this. The main point I'm trying to make is the fact that so far these lockdowns in Shanghai, China are not necessarily affecting Tesla's production capacity and their means just yet. But if they do, this will actually lower the outcome in the future. Once again, it's not confirmed. I'm not saying it will, but it is something that you should be prepared for just in case because these lockdowns are still going on. They are affecting demand in China, the economic output of the country, and this will in turn have an effect on perhaps like deliveries for Tesla. Now, do I think it's going to be that severe? Not necessarily, but for the entire world right now, for the economies all over the world in like Europe, we are seeing a drop in demand for lots of these EVs and cars. It's just normal. So that is affecting Tesla as well. But I do believe for the long term, it does not matter that much. I'm still very bullish. So what's going on with the charts right now for Tesla in the market? Well, one of the things I mentioned in one of my previous videos was this. If we zoom out on SPY, all right, you guys can see this trend right here. We have this like descending, broadening wedge. We touched the upper trend line. All right, and just look at this pattern. We had the lower trend line touch, then the top one, the bottom one, the midline, the bottom, the top, the bottom, the midline, the bottom, the top. And you'll notice something. We came down, we started to see a nice bounce off 348. The market's starting to push up. We broke above the midline. So now it's making us wonder, could we actually get a huge rally to this like 412 area? Isn't that very possible? And the answer is yes, it could happen, but it's going to be very dependent on FOMC. Now, if things go as planned, and Jerome Powell ends up coming out and he's not as hawkish as some people anticipate. But it's not just being hawkish or not, because the market is almost fully priced in 75 basis points. It's more like, what is going to be his forecast? Is he going to talk about a pivot? What is he going to say about inflation and what they're going to do with open market operations? In my opinion, it's going to be very effective. It's going to have a big impact on how the market moves. So because we're so uncertain, I am anticipating some chop in this zone right here, some sideways action. And I do think this is going to translate itself into the entire market as a whole. If you look at Apple, very, very similar trend. Apple had a huge, huge green day just recently. If you actually look right here. And on these like big uptrends like this, even when we have these like massive green candles, we tend to get some retracements just like this beforehand. So on the 5 minute on Apple, just real quick, guys, we do have a gap up here. I do believe this gap could get filled in the short term. I'm just not as confident about tomorrow because of the uncertainty. I'm anticipating some chop here and there. And if the market decides to pump going into FOMC, it would be because of some Fed speakers saying some very, very kind of like dovish things. I don't necessarily want to guarantee that because the whole sentiment has been pretty hawkish over the last couple of weeks and months. So I'd still be very prepared. I'm anticipating lots of chop, guys, lots of sideways action. And I do think that we could see a kind of flat close on Apple For SPY, real quick, like I mentioned, same thing. It's very correlated with Apple. We do have a gap up here that could get filled later on. I'm just not as confident about tomorrow because of this current price action and also because of uncertainty with FOMC. So I'm anticipating a lot of chop between this 385 to about this 388 zone. I just see us trading back and forth again. We could be maybe kind of flat as well. And I think this is going to translate itself into the markets as well. Looking at the NASDAQ or the QQQ, very, very similar trend. Nice gap up here that could definitely get filled in the future. Is it going to happen tomorrow? I'm not 100% sure, but we need to get a clean break above 280 for us to actually see that. And if that does happen, it's going to help Tesla push up, but there's no confirmation of it just yet. It looks more like we're just going to chop back and forth. I mean, the war between the bulls and the Bears was pretty significant today, so this will have an effect on the market. For Tesla, let me pull up Tesla real quick. Tesla closed at about 227.54, so we were actually below 230. We have strong resistance right over there. Tesla has struggled to actually break past that, but what is good though is we have been on an uptrend over the shorter time frame because Tesla is starting to consolidate in this range. It's kind of chopping a bit, but that's actually pretty decent because overall, we're holding up pretty well compared to the market. I'm actually very happy to see that Tesla was green for almost all of today. Now, we did come down at the very end as the market was dropping, but overall, I think Tesla's doing pretty well. So, what am I anticipating for tomorrow? Well, first, we have to look at the key zones. All right. So, Tesla has this gap between 238 and 240. If Tesla gets a big break, I'm not saying it's happening tomorrow, but if we do, whether it's tomorrow or within the next couple of days, if we break above 230 and hold this zone, it's very possible that Tesla's going to get a lot of buyers coming in and pushing this thing all the way up to very close to 240, in my opinion. But so far, we haven't seen confirmation of that move just yet. Now, considering that tomorrow many Fed speakers are going to be speaking, the market's likely going to be shopping. So I do think Tesla's going to have another sideways day. Resistance, the very strong resistance is at about 230, and we actually held support for today around this like 225 zone. Now, in my opinion, guys, 226 was also like previous support. I do think Tesla's going to just trade back and forth throughout the majority of the day, but we did actually touch 221, very close to like 222 temporarily. So this zone right here, I know this looks pretty broad, but I'm going to make this as clear as possible. This zone right here is where Tesla tended to be, and I do think Tesla's going to remain in this zone for the large majority of tomorrow, basically trading back and forth. But I think that most of the price action we see should be in this upper range between 226 and 230. But near the end of the day tomorrow, if the market's uncertain, what tends to happen during these like chop zones before the FOMC meetings, the market tends to drop a bit in anticipation of what the Fed may end up saying that's not confirmed. So this means that for tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Tesla. Can you guys see this? If we see Tesla make a move like this, Tesla pushes up maybe into open. We come down, the market's just trading kind of sideways. Tesla could drop a bit below 226 like this, just temporarily. I'm hoping for a nice bounce off like 222, get a nice bounce off that, and then re-enter this zone, kind of chop back and forth for the large majority of the day like this. But then near the end of the day tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bit of a sell-off again. This is what tends to happen before those FOMC meetings when we are very uncertain. Tesla could end up closing around that 226 to 225 zone just like this, guys. So be very prepared for a move like this. It's very, very possible, so be ready. It's also important to note that, look, sometimes the market does very unpredictable things. I mean, it would not make much sense if the whole market just rallies the day before FOMC, unless these big institutions know something, quote unquote, know something. So if that's the case, I mean, if Tesla does end up breaking and holding 230, which I think is kind of unlikely, but even if we do have potential to go for this gap fill very, very soon. Now, when it comes to FOMC, all right, it's going to be on the 2nd of November when Powell is speaking. Expect crazy, crazy volatility all over the place. Then after that, we're going to pick a direction, in my opinion. The market might trade sideways when Powell is talking. Then all of a sudden, when he's done speaking, we could get a huge rally and the market could just rally to crazy, crazy numbers all of a sudden. But if Powell says something the market does not want to hear, he remains very aggressive and stubborn and does not really talk much about the pivot, it could cause the market to actually come down. So be very prepared for that. We could go either way after the 2nd. It's going to really affect us. But until then, I'm anticipating more chop because of uncertainty and also because of the fact that the markets are just not fully aware of what on earth many of these officials may say very soon. With that said, thank you all so much for listening. Please anticipate more chop for Tesla and be ready for anything because the market could be very unpredictable sometimes. Be ready for tomorrow. It's the first part of the FOMC meeting. Be ready for any big announcements and very like huge sell-offs out of nowhere, followed by like big pushes to the upside. It's going to be very spontaneous looking, so be ready. Thank you for listening. Have a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon because the long-term future is still incredibly bright, and peace out.